So the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease is a growing problem in the United States. Currently, about 2 million people have this disease, and that number is projected to grow to 9 million by 2040. Now, about every 3 out of 5 patients who have Alzheimer's disease tend to wander. So in the nursing homes, care centers, or medical institutions where these patients are cared for, patient wandering can be a huge problem. Because it's difficult to track their whereabouts when they wander. So as the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease grows, being able to manage this wandering is an even more important problem.
Right. To solve this problem, we created a patient monitoring system. So the way that the system works is that each patient has their own unique RF transmitter which identifies them. And each room has an RF receiver which collects information about whether or not the patient is in the room. All this information is then sent via Ethernet to a centralized dashboard which can be viewed by caregivers, and basically what the dashboard does is it will tell you if a patient is in a particular room, and if the patient is not in the room it will alert the caregiver saying that the patient is. So an advantage of our device over other existing products is that it is able to uniquely identify each patient instead of just giving a count of how many patients are in a room. Additionally, instead of this being a device for use by one patient, our product is also extremely scalable and can be used for multiple patients in a care home setting.
To emulate patient presence within a room, we've hacked these RF key fob transmitters and used Arduinos to mimic a patient repeatedly pressing their identifying button. For example, we've set up this module to mimic repeatedly pressing button A, and we set up this module to mimic repeatedly pressing button B. And this represents 2 unique identifying signals from 2 distinct patients. Over here, we have an RF receiver wirelessly detecting these patient signals for room 1, and data on patient presence is processed on the Arduino here and sent to the web via Ethernet shield using a protocol called DWE. Tweets are stored in their web server here, and we use freeboard.com to pull in DWE information and visualize it on a customizable dashboard. There are several key internal processes that allow our system to work. First, since the receiver cannot detect 2 transmitter signals at once, to avoid signal interference between 2 patients, we program the patient modules to pulse their signals periodically with different frequencies. Here the oscilloscope shows the 2 signals in green and yellow. Second, to determine if a patient is missing, we had to establish a timing threshold. If a patient signal is not detected in a room for 5 seconds, that patient is reported as missing from that room. And finally, to define the geographic area of a room, we limit the range of the RF receiver by using a resistor to reduce its power.
So we're currently on the right side of Detkin, and this represents room 1 for us. So here's our dashboard, and as you can see, room 2, the circle is lit up for Dane, and in room 1, the circle is lit up for John. So now, Dane and John are both going to switch rooms. Now you can see on the dashboard, it shows that John is now in room 2, and Dane is now in room 1. The dashboard now shows that both John and Dane are in room 1. You can now see that the dashboard shows that both John and Dane are in room 2. The dashboard shows that John is neither in room 2 nor room 1. These are 2 options for what the RF transmitter could look like. The one on the left is similar to the key fob, but it would just basically be housing the automated system that transmit the RF signal, and it has a small clip on the back so the patient could attach it to their clothing. The option on the right is a bracelet, which would look similar to a Fitbit or Jawbone, and this bracelet would transmit the signal to the receiver. Here, the box just represents casing for the receiver, and cases similar to these would be placed in each room for which this system would apply. In conclusion, we've created a system that has 3 main advantages. First, the system is easily scalable across multiple patients and multiple rooms for different care centers and medical facilities. Second, we stressed this earlier, but the system can uniquely identify patients in rooms as opposed to just the occupancy of patients. And third, this is a completely non-invasive system. The RF sensor could just be worn as a bracelet or a clip-on to your clothing. And finally, the main disadvantage of this system is just precisely defining geographic regions. For example, if this isn't defined precisely within a medical facility, a patient could appear in 2 rooms at once. So this is something we'd work to improve in future iterations.